The arrival of the unknown. Commander Krell stood at the helm of the Vigilant Dawn, his sharp eyes scanning the dark expanse of space. His four nostrils flared slightly as he inhaled deeply, the tension of the mission weighing heavily on him. This wasn't the first time he had been on patrol, but today something felt different. Something was in the air, an unsettling hum of anticipation. He could feel it in his second heart, the subtle thrum that made the hairs along his spine twitch with instinctive unease. "Commander," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Turs, the young ensign at the communications station, his bioluminescent freckles flickering nervously as he fidgeted with the console. I was just going over the human legends again. I know it's silly, but..." Krell sighed and looked at Turs, his yellow eyes narrowing slightly in exasperation. "Ensign, I've told you before, there's no need to entertain those myths. Humans didn't have laser eyes, nor did they bleed acid. Those are just stories the entertainment feeds cooked up. There's no truth to them." Turs nodded hesitantly, but Krell could tell the young alien still wasn't entirely convinced. He understood. After all, humans had been absent for over 300 years, their extinction a historical fact, a distant, almost forgotten memory. But to Krell, the past wasn't so easily erased. History had a way of twisting itself into folklore, and a real story was often buried beneath layers of myth. Humans were no gods or monsters, just a species with a strange, unpredictable nature. That was what made them dangerous and fascinating. The Vigilant Dawn hummed softly around them, its advanced systems maintaining the constant vigil over the outermost edge of Xantar space. The crew members moved silently, attending to their tasks, all too familiar with the boredom of routine border patrols. These missions were meant to keep the crew sharp, but the region they patrolled, the Crimson Nebula, was largely empty, save for automated mining operations and occasional research outposts. Krell stretched his elongated form and turned toward the observation window. His mind wandered back to the stories he had heard as a hatchling. Stories of humans, wild tales that seemed as real as the stars themselves. He had grown up with them, with the idea that humans were a force to be reckoned with. But the fact that the Xantar Union had wiped them out still lingered in his thoughts. "Commander," Lieutenant Vex's voice brought him back to the present. "We're approaching the outer edge of the Crimson Nebula. No anomalies detected. Standard patrol route to be completed in approximately 26 units. Krell nodded, grateful for the interruption. "Acknowledged. Keep me posted." He stepped away from the window and paced the bridge, his long claws clicking softly against the deck. The silence of space was almost oppressive, but it was a silence they had all grown accustomed to. As the minutes passed, the hum of the Vigilant Dawn seemed to grow louder, almost as if the ship itself was warning them. Krell stood by the command chair, his mind racing with thoughts of humans, how their fleet had been wiped out, their civilization brought to the brink of extinction. The mysteries surrounding their disappearance fascinated him. But as far as the Union was concerned, humanity was a footnote in the annals of history. Then, as if on cue, the quiet hum of the bridge was broken by a sudden flare of alarm. "Commander, this is Pell, Navigator. We're picking up something on long-range sensors." Pell's voice crackled through the comms, tense and urgent. "Something large, multiple objects. They weren't there a moment ago. And now they've just appeared on our scanners." The sudden tension in Pell's voice sent a chill down Krell's spine. His heart fluttered nervously in his chest as he spun toward the sensor station. "Define large," he demanded, trying to maintain control of the situation. Pell's tentacles danced nervously over the interface, projecting holographic readings into the air. "Massive, way beyond the size of anything in our database. They're not showing up as anything we recognize, Commander. It's like they jumped in from somewhere else. There's no sign of any natural formations that would explain this." Krell's mind raced as he processed the information. FTL, faster than light. Travel wasn't unusual, but for something to appear precisely at the edge of a border patrol route, That was beyond coincidence. Cloaking technology? Krell asked, his voice low but sharp. He had seen it before, in some of the most advanced enemy vessels. The Xantar Union had made use of it on occasion, but it was rare, even among the most elite fleets. No, sir, Pell replied, his voice now tight with disbelief. Not cloaking. These objects simply appeared. It's like they just materialized out of nowhere. The bridge fell silent. The crew could feel the weight of the moment settle over them. Every one of them had heard of the strange and legendary disappearances of human fleets. Some had whispered that humanity had mastered technology beyond the Xantar's understanding, others that they had simply vanished, leaving behind only stories of their might. But to see evidence of something that shouldn't be there, it was a reality no one had been prepared for. Krell's mind raced with possibilities, his secondary heart pounding faster as the realization sank in. Humans, real humans. Could this be them? Could they have somehow survived the extinction event that had wiped them from the history books? Commander, Lieutenant Vex interrupted. We're approaching the coordinates now. The objects are moving, heading towards the edge of the nebula. Do you want us to engage? Krell hesitated for a moment. This was no longer a simple border patrol. This was something far more dangerous, something the Union had not prepared for. The mysteries of the Crimson Nebula, the rumors of a long-forgotten fleet. Everything had led them to this point. And the worst part was, Krell had no idea what came next. Hold your positions, Krell ordered. Prepare for anything. As the crew braced for whatever was about to unfold, Krell couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. A new chapter in the saga of humanity was about to be written, and whether it would be a tale of alliance, conflict, or destruction, no one knew. But one thing was clear: the universe would never be the same again. And with that realization, the Vigilant Dawn plunged deeper into the unknown. The Vigilant Dawn drifted silently through the vastness of space, its engines humming steadily as they entered the heart of the Crimson Nebula. The ship's sensors buzzed with activity, and the crew's anxiety grew as they neared the unknown objects. They were still beyond visual range, their exact shape and nature concealed by the black void of space. But one thing was certain: whatever they were, they weren't supposed to be there. Commander Krell stood with his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the sensor readings. He had long been trained to face the unknown, but today felt different. There was an electric tension in the air, something that made his scales twitch and his mind race. The Vigilant Dawn was on the precipice of discovering something that could change the course of history. But what exactly would that discovery be? Commander, Lieutenant Vex called from the sensor station, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. We're entering the coordinates. The objects are moving slowly, but they're not following any predictable trajectory. They seem to be reacting to our presence, almost as if they're aware of us. Krell's tail flicked in annoyance. Of course, the objects were aware. It was too much of a coincidence that they had appeared right on the edge of their patrol route. They weren't just drifting in space. They were positioning themselves in a way that felt deliberate. Commander, I recommend we increase our speed, Lieutenant Vex added, her voice now laced with a hint of urgency. We may be able to catch them before they vanish again. Krell narrowed his eyes, debating the best course of action. They were in uncharted territory, and rushing into the unknown without more information could be disastrous. Yet waiting, doing nothing, could cost them the opportunity to understand what was out there. No, Krell replied firmly. We maintain our current course and speed. Let's see what they do. Prepare all systems for evasive action, just in case. He turned to the rest of the crew. Everyone, stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with here. The bridge was eerily quiet as they approached the last known position of the mysterious objects. Krell could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The Vigilant Dawn was a ship built for exploration, yes, but it was also a warship. The crew was trained to face threats, not to engage in peaceful diplomacy or cautious observation. But this was different. They had no idea what these objects were capable of. Just as they neared the edge of the nebula, something changed. A low rumble passed through the ship, a vibration that could be felt even through the reinforced hull. It wasn't the usual hum of the engines. It was something much deeper, more primal. "Commander," Navigator Pell called from his station, his voice tense. "Something is happening. The objects are changing." There. Before Pell could finish his sentence, a bright flash of light erupted on the ship's screens. The objects, which had previously been nothing more than vague, indistinct shapes, were now fully visible, and their true form became evident. They were not ships, not any design the crew had ever seen. They were enormous, sleek, and elegant, their surfaces shimmering with an ethereal glow, as though they were made from the very fabric of space itself. The edges seemed to pulse and shimmer, rippling like liquid under a controlled force. "Are those ships?" Turs, the ensign, whispered in awe, his voice trembling. "They're not just ships," Krell muttered, barely able to tear his eyes away from the holographic display. "Those are weapons, designed to look like something else. The question is, who are they meant to fight?" As if on cue, the objects shifted position, forming an intricate pattern in space. Their movements were precise and deliberate, like a well-rehearsed dance. It was as though they were trying to communicate, but the message was still unclear. The crew watched in stunned silence, each member trying to comprehend what they were seeing. Suddenly, a low, resonant hum filled the bridge. It came from the objects, vibrating through the very air itself. Krell felt it deep in his bones, a sound that seemed to call out, almost as if it were probing, reaching for something. The hum pulsed, growing louder with each passing second. "Commander," Lieutenant Vex spoke again, her voice urgent. "The objects are sending out some sort of signal. It's not in any language we can recognize, but it's definitely directed at us. There." Before she could finish, the signal intensified, and the entire ship shuddered under the force. A strange energy field enveloped the vigilant Dawn, flickering across the sensors and blurring the ship's visibility. It was as if the ship was caught in a web of invisible threads, pulling it toward the objects with an almost magnetic force. "Brace for impact," Krell shouted as he rushed to the command chair. His claws dug into the armrests, and the crew quickly followed suit, securing themselves as the ship groaned under the pressure. But just as suddenly as the energy field appeared, it dissipated, leaving the vigilant Dawn untouched. Though shaken, the bridge was silent, save for the sharp intake of breath from the crew. What was that?" Turs stammered, his bioluminescent freckles flickering in confusion. Krell stared at the holographic display, which now showed the objects maintaining their positions, their pulsations rhythmic and steady. For a long moment, the crew said nothing. They were all thinking the same thing. What did this mean? Who, or what, was behind these mysterious objects? "I don't know," Krell said finally, breaking the silence. "But we've never encountered anything like this before. It's clear that someone, or something, wants us to take notice." Pell's voice came through the comms once more. "Commander, I'm picking up something else. Another signal. Faint, but it's there. It's coming from one of the objects." Krell's heart raced. Another signal. Were they trying to communicate, or were they preparing for something worse? "Open a channel," Krell ordered, his voice steady but with a hint of urgency. "Let's see what they want." The crew watched with bated breath as the communication line opened, but to their surprise, it wasn't a message or a voice that came through. Instead, the image of a human face, distorted and flickering, as if from a broken transmission, appeared on the screen. The face was gaunt, tired, but undeniably human. "I knew you would come," the face whispered. "But I don't know if it's too late." Krell's mind whirled. A human. Alive. After all these years. "Who are you?" Krell demanded, his voice trembling with the weight of the question. The face flickered again, and the transmission cut off. The bridge fell silent once more. The implications of what had just happened were too vast, too mind-boggling to process all at once. But one thing was certain now: humanity wasn't extinct. And their story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Krell turned toward the crew, his face grim. "Prepare yourselves. Whatever happens next, we are not alone out here. We've awoken something, and we need to be ready to face it." The crew braced themselves for what lay ahead, the uncertainty of the unknown stretching before them like an uncharted sea. The hunt for answers had only just begun, and in the dark corners of space, humanity's legacy was far from finished. The awakening. The transmission flickered out, leaving a strange, almost haunting silence in its wake. The crew of the Vigilant Dawn stood frozen, processing what they had just witnessed. A human face, distorted and fragmented, had appeared on their screens, a face that, despite its disheveled appearance, had unmistakably been human. Commander Krell's mind raced, replaying the final words. "I knew you would come, but I don't know if it's too late." "Commander," Lieutenant Vex's voice broke the stillness. "What do we do now? We have to figure out who that was. They're alive, and they're out there." Her voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. Krell shook his head slowly, the weight of the situation pressing down on him like 1,000 tons of stone. "We proceed with caution. Whatever this is, it's not simple. These objects, this signal, it's all too calculated. We can't afford to make any mistakes." The crew turned back to their stations, their eyes still fixed on the now still objects floating in the deep black of space. They no longer seemed threatening, but that only made the situation more unsettling. The things they had just witnessed: a human transmission, an energy field pulling them toward the objects, indicated that they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. "Commander," Pell called out from the navigation console, his tentacles dancing over the holographic display. "The objects, they're moving again. But this time, they're aligning themselves in a new formation. It's like they're waiting for something." Krell's tail twitched uneasily as he stepped forward, studying the sensor display. The objects had reformed into a perfect triangular formation, and each one seemed to pulse with a steady rhythm, their light flickering in synchronized patterns. It was like they were calling to something, something that only they understood. "Maintain course," Krell ordered, his voice steady, but filled with quiet determination. "We stay where we are until we know more. I don't like the way they're moving." As the crew continued to watch in silence, the ship's sensors flared again, picking up a faint signal. It was more coherent this time, a pulse of energy that cut through the black void of space like a beacon. It was coming from deep within the nebula, much closer to them now. The signal was unlike anything they had ever encountered before, something human, yet not. "Another signal," Vex said quietly. "It's coming from within the nebula, near the edge. If we follow it, it might lead us straight to that human, if they're still alive." Krell's mind raced, torn between the need to investigate and the caution that kept him rooted in the moment. The nebula was dangerous, an unknown expanse filled with unstable energies and hidden anomalies. But a human alive in the heart of it, that was a possibility too important to ignore. "Prepare for a course adjustment," Krell said after a pause, his voice firm. "Set a direct path to the source of that signal. But we move slowly, no sudden changes. We have no idea what we're dealing with." The crew began their preparations, and as the ship adjusted its trajectory, Krell couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. Everything they had seen so far, the mysterious objects, the strange signals, the human face, it was too much, and yet it was exactly what he had feared. The Vigilant Dawn moved cautiously toward the nebula's edge, the engines humming softly as the sensors buzzed with new data. The crew remained focused, but tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, each person silently acknowledging that their mission had just gone from routine to unprecedented. As they neared the source of the signal, the nebula's dark, swirling clouds grew more intense, casting strange shadows across the ship's hull. Krell could feel the ship's systems working overtime to keep everything stable. But even so, the atmosphere felt oppressive. Like the very fabric of space was being stretched thin. "Commander," Pell said, his voice urgent, "we're getting a significant reading from the signal. There's a structure buried deep within the nebula. It's massive, far larger than anything we've ever encountered. It's not showing up on our standard scans, but the energy readings are unlike anything in our database." The words hit Krell like a cold blast of air. A structure buried deep within the nebula. It made sense, in a way. The strange objects they had encountered, the human transmission, it all pointed to something hidden, something ancient. But what kind of structure could be so elusive? And what was its connection to the humans? "Bring it up on the main screen," Krell ordered, his voice low and steady. The crew gathered around, their eyes fixed on the display as Pell manipulated the controls. A holographic display shimmered and flickered before a new image appeared. It was massive, towering and impossibly intricate, stretching far beyond the scope of the screen. The structure looked like a fusion of organic and technological elements, its surface covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and ripple as if alive. It was like a monument, but one built by hands that understood both science and art. "It's a city," Ters ventured, his voice filled with awe. "No," Krell said softly, his eyes narrowing. "This is more than a city. It's something else, something ancient." The vigilant dawn drew closer to the structure, and as they approached, the signal grew stronger, the strange energy pulses becoming more intense. It was clear now, whatever this place was, it wasn't abandoned. Something, or someone, was waiting for them. The ship's sensors began to pick up new data, unusual readings that suggested movement within the structure. Krell's mind raced. Who, or what, was inside? "We're entering the structure's vicinity," Pell said, his voice tinged with hesitation. "I'm picking up activity inside. But it's not human. The patterns are too complex. Whatever this is, it's not what we expected." Krell stood, his body tense as he stepped toward the viewport. He gazed at the massive structure ahead of them, a sense of foreboding growing in his chest. The Xanter had explored the farthest reaches of the galaxy, but nothing had prepared them for this. "Steady," Krell said. "Everyone, keep your stations. We move in slowly. Whatever we're about to uncover, we need to be ready for anything." As the ship continued to draw closer, the hum of the vigilant dawn seemed to fade into the background, drowned out by the eerie silence that surrounded the structure. The crew was now on the edge of something that defied all logic and understanding. There was no going back. And then, as the ship crossed the final threshold into the structure's gravitational field, the first signal was received, a clear, direct message. It was from the human face. It said only one word: help. The crew held their breath. This was no longer just a mission. It was a race against time. They were about to uncover a dark secret that had been hidden for centuries, and it was clear that whatever awaited them inside the structure would be far more dangerous than anything they had ever faced before.